Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. My next guest is Dave Seymour. He's the CEO of Freedom Venture Investments. It's a private equity real estate fund, and he's the star of A&E's hit show, Flipping Boston. Dave is considered a leading expert in the commercial multifamily and ground-up development transaction world. Dave, I'm really excited to talk to you. You moved to the U.S. when you were 20 years old, and you found yourself working for the fire service for over 16 years. How the heck did you get into real estate?
Yeah, it's quite a transitional story. First of all, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to meet like-minded, right? We talk a little bit before every time somebody does a podcast. Either there's reciprocity. There's got to find some good alliances going in, and I love the fact that you're multifaceted too. It's like you talked about your tech side of your business, the entrepreneurial side of the business. So for me on a podcast, and I know you asked me a question about real estate, I probably should answer it, but I always just speak what comes out, right? From God and out, it just comes.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to find those alliances. We talked about your service and your brother's service, and so that's all important to me. So how did I get into real estate? To take a long story and compress it and make it kind of short is kind of important. I am an immigrant to the States. I'm a legal immigrant to the States. I came over on a fiance visa, and I got married, and I became a naturalized citizen about 4 years after I was in the country. Really cool day for me. I'll go down that rabbit hole just for a second because it does really align with everything else. I got sworn in Faneuil Hall. Faneuil Hall is there's an old a meeting hall there that was part of the revolution, right? The redcoats are coming, and Faneuil Hall has a big area there, and I got sworn in with about 300 other naturalized citizens, and for me it was interesting because I'm from England, right? And I'm in Boston Tea Party, redcoats, and all of that stuff. And there I am, leaving England behind to become an American citizen. But it was instrumental in me because there's a lot of the culture in this country is critical to my success, and I think yours as well, and maybe your listeners, is a sense of, in this country, even with all of the chaos that we just went through with elections and everything else, and the chaos that we'll walk into in the next 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, at its core, there has never been a better place to be an entrepreneur than this country. Because if you are prepared to get out of your own way, if you are prepared to invest in the resources around you, look at the successes. Let's talk about, Jeff Bezos. Let's talk about Elon Musk. Like him or hate him, Donaldo Trumpo, you know what I mean? Like the guy got game in the real estate marketplace. So, that was in me, and I didn't realize it was in me until I actually joined the fire department. I always loved team sports. I was a great soccer player, or football player, as we call it back home as a kid. I liked looking up and down the line of a sports line, knowing that, Bobby's got my back, I got Charlie's back. It was kind of like we're going to war, head down, lock arms, go, baby, go. And the fire service was attractive like that. And at the same time, it allowed me to genuinely be of service to people in the community, right? When somebody calls the cops, it's not a happy, phone call, right? But
you're meeting them on their worst day.
Yeah, you're meeting them on their worst day. And, some of that in the fire department, especially if you're running on the paramedic trucks. But, most of the time we were there to help in a medical situation and save a life if you could, or save a property. And, there was nothing more empowering than that, to be trained, right? To do the reps necessary to be a professional firefighter and paramedic. and then almost almost in a rote sense, be able to know exactly what you need to do next. It was like always being able to, read the next 3 or 4 steps. And the reason I'm describing the fire service like that was because that ended up transitioning for me later on in life, where I looked at the environment in which I was in and said, what's next? What's next for my family? So as a firefighter, we worked, what did we were on two off back then. So we had two days of 10-hour days in the fire service and two 14-hour nights. And then we had 4 days off. And it was during those 4 days off that you could either, sit around or do nothing, which was never really my DNA to sit on my hands and watch the world go by. I don't mind a little Netflix therapy every now and again, but most of the time
Sure.
I want to be engaged. And on my days off, I was working construction with a couple of the other guys in the fire department, and that was really the beginning of my introduction to what I call today is still sticks and bricks. Right?
Mhm.
It's 2x4s, it's insulation, it's concrete, it's finish, it's wiring, it's plumbing, it's a roof, and it's a moneymaker if you know what you're doing. And that kind of started the ignition for me to think about real estate.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, there's something about it that stuck, right? Because a lot of people try it and they
Yeah.
figure out, oh, well, this isn't as glamorous as the fix and flip show that I watched on HGTV, right? I actually have to
Yeah.
work, and there's
Yeah.
budgets, and
Yeah.
there's timelines, and there's
Yeah.
you got to work with subs and all of the chaos of the work site.
Yeah.
What was it that resonated with you?
Yeah. Look, man, some people are attracted to it for the design features. We're all attracted to it for the monetary potential. So there's the attraction, but for me personally, it was a drive. To be frank with you, coming from a working class background in England, um, I was really only ever educated and taught one way to create value and money, and that was to trade my time. What I didn't tell you was while I was working at the fire department, I was working full time construction on my days off, and then also full time in retail security because I was a financial illiterate. I was a financial donkey, and I say that purposefully, and I say it as directly as I do, so that I can remember it. My very best friends were Visa and Mastercard. I remember saying to my dad, I say, Dad, it's crazy over in America, Dad. He goes, what's that, boy? I go, you can actually spend more money than you earn in America. He goes, what? He goes, that's illegal, isn't it? I go, no, Dad, they do it all the time over here. It's nuts. Like the fluidity and the looseness of finances, keeping up with the Joneses, et cetera, et cetera. And I made some really ignorant mistakes with my own personal finances and my primary residence, and became a victim of the crash 2008, 9, 10, 11. Short selling my own primary residence. So I was driven to real estate via my faith. I remember I'm sitting in my pickup truck. My house was in pre-foreclosure, and it was horrible, dude. I'm in my pickup truck like it's desperado time. There's no more hours to trade for money, and I'm screaming and shouting at my God, and I'm like, dude, what's up? I want to wrestle with this guy. Like I want to roll around with him a little bit, and I remember saying, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. I don't cheat on my wife. I'm a good dad to my kids. I'm a good employee. I'm a good employee, right? Help me. And I was crying hard, man, screaming, help me. And I heard nothing. Benson, I didn't hear anything, brother. And I'm like, he either is or he isn't, but right now I guess he isn't, right? And I turned the ignition in my truck, and it was on a radio station. It was on a local news radio station called BZ. And as I turned the ignition on, a commercial came on the radio. Teach Me Foreclosure, a free 1.5 hour seminar coming to your neck of the woods. And I'm like, really? Now I'm leaning out the window and I'm shouting up at the sky while I'm driving. Really? That's the answer? I got to learn. And then the pieces clicked in my squash. because I flashed back to a construction site I was working on months earlier, years earlier, I can't tell you when, where a BMW pulled up on the job site. And I was on a 4-man auger with 3 of my boys from South America in January, trying to drill down to a frost line, which is 4 feet down in frozen dirt. And it was comedic, man. We were spinning around like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, me and my 3 amigos, right? I'm the only big white guy on this thing, spinning around with my boys. And I'm looking at my brothers and they're looking at me and I'm like, this is chaos. I remember putting the thing over. You know, my hands are frozen, my face is frozen. I can't get down. I'm frustrated. I got to build a deck because I got to make money. And this BMW pulled up on the job site, and there were two young guys and a young lady got out of this car, and they were well dressed. They were warm. They were carrying hot lattes. They had Uggs. I remember the dude was wearing Uggs boots, and I'm like, who the hell wears Uggs boots? Like something was different. And they were smiling, and they were clean. Said to one of the boys,
everything that you weren't.
Yeah, everything I wasn't, right? And I looked at it, one of the guys, I went, who are these guys? Because they're the investors. They own the property that we're working on. We fix it up and they sell it, and then they make money. I'm like, what? How much do they make? And the foreman or whatever he was there, the guy who knew him, he's like, they can make anywhere from 30 to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I slide up over to him, turn on the charm, ask him a few questions. And I say this with the utmost respect, but they weren't that smart. They weren't that smart. They weren't like carrying Harvard degrees or MIT insights. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They just knew something that I didn't. They knew something I did not. And when I heard that commercial in my moment of desperation, it clicked. And I remember running home, driving like a Looney Tunes to my wife. And I come in the door, I'm like, Mary Beth, I got the answer. This is it. I got the answer. We're going to be real estate investors. She looked at me.
Like, you've gone crazy.
She thought, my God, this is when everybody's running away from real estate, brother. And I'm like, no, we're going to be real estate investors. We're going to this class and blah, 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 blah. And that was how I was pushed towards the investment side. I went to a seminar and there were, I don't know, maybe 200 people there. And then I went to a 3-day seminar. And at the 3-day seminar, they sold me a $30,000 investment package that I couldn't afford. And I remember standing there with my wife, and it was Sunday at lunchtime and the thing's ending, and they got me. Like they've sold me. As long as what they were telling me was true, I knew I would get it done. And I looked at Mary Beth and I said, what do you think? She said, what do you think? I said, here's what I know, darling. I said, I can't keep doing what I've been doing because there are no more hours in the day. I cannot be a husband to you. I cannot be a father to any children that we have in the future because we didn't have kids at that point. I said, I cannot be present if I'm always working. And she said something that was so powerful to me that day. She said, go get him, killer. She said, I'm proud of you and I love you. And she said, I'll support you in whatever you do. And for me, it was one of those defining moments. One in the truck, then one with my wife, one on the job site years earlier. The Trinity right there for me. And she said, I love you. I support you in whatever it is that you want to do. Go get them. And I said, well, I'm glad you said that because I got no money on my credit card. I'm going to have to put it on your cards. And I always refer to Mary Beth, my wife, as my first private investor. And once I made that, I bought $30,000 worth of accountability. And within 6 months, I saved the foreclosure on my home. I threatened a short sale with the second and third lien, whatever the heck was on there. They realized they had no strength in the position. I learned what a mortgage was. I learned what points were. I learned what BIPs were. I learned what interest was. I learned what a contract was. I learned how to use a contract. I learned that I could be of service. And I quickly became one of the most prominent distressed asset investors in the New England area. And, it's been an absolute blessed journey because from there, I've just never looked back. That was, how long ago was that? That was almost 15 years ago now. And from that day to this, my wife has been able to not go work. She's a labor and delivery nurse by trade. She's kept her license, but she hasn't had to leave her home. She's been able to raise my children. My son's going to be 15 in a couple of days. So there's the timing right there. You know, I start real estate, she gets pregnant, and she raises my boys and my other son, Bennett. And when they were little, they watched me flip houses. You know, they did. You'd ask Bennett, he was 3 years old. He's now 13 in March, so he's 12 now. People would say to Bennett, "What does your dad do?" And he'd look him right in the eyes, and he'd look at him and he goes, "Dad buys houses, cash money." Like
Where did you hear that?
Like I'd use him in the marketing. My oldest boy from my prior marriage, he's now 30 years old. It's actually an episode of the TV show. My son inherited a 2-unit property from his grandmother who passed away. She died actually while we were filming at the asset, so she didn't get to be in the final scene. So we just dedicated that episode to grandma. But she left this boy, you know, a 2-unit property worth at the time maybe 500,000, and she left it free and clear to an 18-year-old kid. And it was kind of interesting because the conversation with him was this. He comes up to me and he goes, "Grandma's house." He said, "You know, what should we do with it?" I said, "Well, what do you want to do with it, Robert?" He said, "Well, let's fix up the other apartment, one that wasn't on the TV show." He said, "And then we can rent it for cash flow, right?" I go, "We can." He said, "I don't know any property managers." I go, "I got you covered." You know, like I walked him through the steps and managed the asset for him. So he cash flowed, I think, for about a year. And then he says to me, "Dad," and this was the moment, man. I knew I'd changed the trajectory of the Seymour family tree. Because he looks at me and he goes, "Dad, grandma's house, cash flow's nice. Because there's a lot of dead equity in there." I go, he's 19 years old. I go, "What?" Because there's a lot of dead equity in there. I go, "What do you mean by dead equity?" He goes, "Well, what's the house worth?" I go, "I don't know, 600. He goes, "Well, those are 600 soldiers," he said, "sitting in the barracks doing nothing."
Mm.
That's what he said to me. I said, "Like you say, where do they hear these things?" I said, "Well, what would your suggestion be?" He goes, "Can we get a HELOC?" I go, "What's a HELOC, Robert?" He goes, "A home equity line of credit. You know what it is." I go, "Well, you can't get a HELOC. You'd need somebody to sponsor you." He goes, "Well, do you know anybody who would sponsor me with the bank to get a HELOC?" I go, "As a matter of fact, I do." Right. So I get the kid, I don't know, it was maybe 250 or 300,000. I can't remember now. So we pull the equity out. It still cash flows, obviously not as well as it did before because we've now got the debt. And then he did it again. He got me, man. He says, "Well, what can we borrow the money from the bank?" And we were still at low interest rates back then. I think it was like 4.5%, 5%, something like that. I said, I think we can borrow it from 4.5% from my guys. He goes, "Okay." He said, "What can we lend it at?" I go, "What?" He goes, "What can we lend it at?" I go, "Market rate right now, 12 and 2. He goes, 12%, 2 points? I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you know anybody who can facilitate that for me, Dad?" I go, "As a matter of fact, I do." And then I lent his money for him. But he asked first. You know, my father said to me, "David, work hard, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. Do a solid 8 hours. You know, keep your nose clean, son. Mind your P's and Q's, as we used to call it back in the day, your pleases and your thank yous, and just get in the herd with the rest of the sheep." That's really the message my father gave me, not because he was a bad guy. It's all he knew. And then because of this country, the opportunities that this country offers this kid from the East End of London, right? I now have a 30-year-old son who sits on a real estate portfolio, who invests, while he still pulls down, you know, a 6-figure income because he's a computer nerd. And he went to Wentworth and got a degree on top of that. Oh, but he's also one of those millennials who only works 3 days a week from home in his underwear. You know what I mean? Right. God is good. So that's, you know, that's a little taste of real estate and how it's impacted my life and why I continue to be drawn towards it. Why wouldn't you be, you know?
Oh, there's so many positives and there's so many angles too. Like you just named like 5 different kinds of strategies in that one
Sure.
story, right?
Yeah.
Flipping properties, leveraging assets to borrow against,
Yeah.
arbitrage, you know,
Yeah.
borrowing at a low interest rate, lending it out at a higher interest rate. Like you
Yeah.
just wrapped a bunch of different things into one example.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
during that time period between, the late 2000s and 2012, you built quite a reputation for yourself,
Yeah.
and it attracted some interest from A&E.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that intro happen? And by the way, I want to ask, do you know Brad Holcomb?
I do know the name. Yeah. Who's Brad?
He's an A&E executive.
I
He
do know Brad Holcomb. Yeah. He wasn't the guy that hired us. He came in after the executive that hired us on, but I do know Brad Holcomb. Yeah. I know of him, put it that way.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine. I met
Is
him
he
through a
really?
mastermind, and
That's
he's
great.
helped a few of my friends get their own shows.
Yeah.
If you've ever heard of Pace and Jamil,
Oh, yeah. So I was
Pace
in a
Cody.
mastermind with Pace and Jamil down in Tampa
Mm-hmm.
right at the time they were getting their TV show.
Yep.
And it was interesting to watch, man, because I was still the cool kid on the block, right? I was Dave from Flipping Boss. I'm not cool
Right.
anymore, just so you know. I was the cool kid on the block, and Pace and Jamil, like kind of pulled me off to the side, and they're like, "What are we walking into?" And I
You
just
didn't try
said
to
to
scare
him,
him off, apparently.
"No, no, look, man, I've got some experience around that world, to the positive as well as the negative, right?" So I just said to him, be as authentic as you're allowed to be, right? That's really important to me personally. I said, you go do whatever it is you want to do, because there was a lot of crap in that world. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, fugazi, as the Italians call it. It's fake. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, hey, that's not the real deal. What does it really look? Oh, like, a 1 hour show, I made $100,000, $200,000. No, you nummy numb, you donkey, you didn't. You had to do this, this, and this, and this, right? So they don't see all of that. It's a show. It's a TV show.
Right.
But I met Pace and Jamil in the education space at the mastermind down there with the heck's his name? Family Mastermind. Anyway, I can't remember his name. Matt Andrews, great
Yep.
guy. Matt Andrews.
Yeah, I'm in the family mastermind.
Oh, I was in, and then I got too busy to stay, so we would have crossed
Yeah.
paths anyway. I'm going to be in Fort Myers in a couple of weeks. We're launching a new product, an inner circle for investors.
Oh,
We're going to
cool.
be down in Fort Myers in when the heck are we going down? In a couple of weeks. But
Is this one of your own products?
yeah, yeah. So
Very cool.
little sidebar. I'll tell you, I got the TV show in a minute, but they combine. When I was successful in real estate through the education space, it was the Whitney organization was who I came in with. They don't exist anymore, but they were the granddaddy. They were the OOG, right? Their list and their mechanisms for teaching were then absorbed by Kiyosaki and the next ones, and then you got your Tony Robbins and all of those guys all jumped on the. So there's a lot of incest in that business.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was successful, and it still blows me away today. I say successful, but at the end of the day, all I did was what I was told to do, right? I paid the money to learn the process, and now I'm implementing what I learned. Right? I've been a teacher myself for many years, and I always say the key to success is the implementation. Knowledge is not power.
Yeah.
It's not, especially with AI today. I mean, I can be an AI genius just by going to Chat GPT, right? So AI has allowed people knowledge, but it doesn't mean anything if it's not implemented. So I start implementing, and the guys who recognize me implementing then said to me, "Will you teach?" And I'm like, "What do you mean teach? I'm still like $70,000 in unsecured credit card debt. I'm still working in a firehouse." And they're like, "Well, no, you just tell the story." Tell the story, Dave. Show that the implementation of the information works. And if you can do that, we think people will resonate. And because of that, I became um, really ingrained in the education space. And I was in a few groups. Russell Brunson, Gary Vaynerchuk was on the periphery back then.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other internet marketing guys, a lot of the other real estate guru-y guys. And I ended up in a world that I never believed that I would be in, because the entrepreneurial elevation went up so high. Think about the influences, right? They talk about the 5 people you hang around with the most. not only their political views, their economic views, their implementation, their work ethic, et cetera, et cetera. You begin to absorb that. And I went from, in the firehouse, loving my brothers, but we all complained all the time, right? To being in these environments that challenge you all the time. And it was Russell Brunson sent me a link to apply for the TV show. And I remember reading the email today, and it was, "Hey, Dave, you're a funny bastard and you're a firefighter. You got a weird accent that nobody understands, because you got London and Boston all mixed up together." He's like, "You should give this a go." But being around so many high-end marketers, by osmosis, I was picking up marketing techniques that I didn't even realize I had. And one was, well, as Pace Moby and Jamil showed you, that's the golden ticket to the education space, is the TV show, right?
Right.
So I knew that there was a Willy Wonka ticket in there somewhere. I just had to grab it. And how could I separate myself from everybody else? Just by filling out an online, online application. So my grandmother probably turned over in her grave, but I used a heck of a lot of profanity in my application. Oh yeah, name me your company. Go F yourself, LLC. I just, tell me about the people on your team. Well, there's Mikey the Mick. He's a dick. I made up some rhyme about Mike, my landscaper, who was also a firefighter with me on the job, and and the final line on the application was, "Don't call me beep 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 beep." I swore at him again in the application. "Don't waste my time. Just get on a plane, train, or automobile. Come up to Boston. I'll show you how it's done. Again, do not call this number. You beep 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 beep," and I call them names again. And I press send. Within 5 minutes, it's a 212 area code calling my phone. I'm like, I'm screaming and shouting like a Looney Tunes. I pick up the phone, straight up. I pick up the phone. I go, "I thought I told you not to call me." And I hung up the phone. I hung up the phone.
Playing hard to get.
I'm playing the game. It's all a game. All of that TV stuff is a game. It's a game, right? And the kid called back. He was laughing. He said, "I don't know whether you're a genius or a lunatic." I said, "What's the difference?" And he said, send me a little video of you guys." And we didn't even have iPhones back then. You couldn't record on a phone. It was like a little iCam, it was called, and you had to plug it in after you shot a little crappy video on there.
Yeah.
I sent that in, and they said, "Hey, we like these guys. Let's go up and do a little record to share." It was a production company that then shared their skills, or their proposal, if you will, to A&E. And if you look at the first episodes of Flipping Boston, the opening line were, "The real estate market's in the crapper. If you got to make money, you got to, move fast." Ba, 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 ba. And all they were doing was showing for sale signs and boarded up houses, because it was the crisis. We were right in the middle of it. And that's how it all began. And then 4 seasons later, 29 episodes, it kind of ran its course. There was actually some kind of legal challenge with the IP of Flipping Boston and Flipping Vegas and Flipping this and Flipping that. And the production company had to back away a little bit, which is why they just changed out the names. I think Pace Moby's is like 6-figure flip or something. Or
Yeah.
And another one of my buddies got one. It was 24-hour flip. I'm like, "Are you all right? You got to flip out." He's on HGTV though, so they don't count. They're way too soft. But he's like a 24-hour flip a house in 24 hours. You can't get an inspection in 24 hours, let alone flip a house. You know what I mean? So that's how it started. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
A great story.
Yeah.
I like how you just went in there. Is that how you really were? Or were you just kind of like being, Dave times 2?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great comment, man. I've from being a stage presenter, or platform speaker as they call it, right? How can you influence? How can you influence through a camera? How can you influence from a stage? How can you even influence one-on-one with an investor, for example? And you said Dave's time too, right? My guys, like the executive level, my guys will say to me, "These guys ain't ready for full Dave. So just
Right.
dial it back. You know what I mean? Dial it back
Yeah.
a few. You can't go in with Hurricane Dave right now. So they're all me at the end of the day. I've been blessed to be able to coach one-on-one with a few folks of, how to platform speak, how to present, how can you work with a really boring, PowerPoint. I mean, PowerPoint's a great tool, but it doesn't mean anything. Can you
Hmm.
still close? Can you still get a message across if your PowerPoint craps out? So, I've been real blessed with that. And one of my things is just be yourself, but be bigger. The authentic self, but bigger. The guy that's talking to you on a podcast right now isn't the guy who's going to sit down, in a couple of hours and have supper with my wife and boys and go, "Hi guys, Dad's here. We're going to have some supper tonight. Those tacos are fantastic." It's not there. And that's how I might feel on the inside. So, finding what your true self is and then elevating it for presence is a big part of it, for sure, for sure.
What do you think the biggest misconception about you that's out there that was portrayed by the show that people
Yeah.
have just grabbed onto? Is there one thing that you're like, man, I just wish that didn't get out?
Yeah, not that it didn't get out. So people will say to me, "Hey, that I remember you did that show Flipping Boston, right?" And my deflection comment is always this: don't believe everything you see on TV because I'm really a nice guy, right? So what does that tell you to answer your question? The commentary from A&E back in the day was that big English guy looks like he could get pretty angry. We'd like to see more of that, right?
Right.
We'd like to see more of that. And there was one particular incident where they were looking for me to rip up one of my GCs, right? Like terrorize him verbally on a job site. Yes, he'd done something wrong, but they wanted me to, go off. And I remember looking at one of the production company folks and saying to him, "Let me explain something to you. There's going to be a day when you're not here anymore, when nobody gives a crap about flipping houses on TV and all of the dog and pony show that goes with it and blah, 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 right?" I said, that day's going to come. And when that day comes, that guy is still going to be with me. That guy has made me a lot of money. I know his wife. I know his kids. I know his family. He's my friend. And
Mm.
if you think I'm going to terrorize that guy on TV because you want to see a little blip in the ratings, I said, it's not going to happen. But what I will promise you is I have an eye for the insights, the stuff that goes down, that happens on a job site. I said, I promise you there will be plenty of drama without having to overly manufacture what's on the site. And that turned out to be true from, neighbors who were trying to get my film crew stoned all the time and drunk all the time to literally really having the guy next door come in and steal all of the tools on one of our job sites. They stole all the tools from my guys. And then I'm talking my guys off the ledge, and the camera crew still got me on mic so they can hear the conversations. Everybody signed a release form. We had a really fantastic shooter producer. She was from Germany. Her name was Christina Hilbig. And I'll never forget, I'm in the backyard with a neighbor, and they're like, "See if you can get him a little rattled. Don't go too far with it." We had a situation with a tree that was coming down. And we're in the backyard, and I'm like, "How you doing? What's going on?" Blah, 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 whatever, right? And he goes, I just don't get any peace at home. And he goes off on this tangent. So I'm listening. The camera's rolling. He says, she's always complaining about he does one of these with his hands, my drinking, right? What I haven't shared with you is I'm sober. I've been sober 35 years in January. I got sober at 23 years old. So anybody who's got that addictive personality and maybe a booze challenge, they're my people too, right? Like I
Right.
got I got answers for that. God's been good to me. So I don't miss an opportunity. And I'm like standing in the backyard with a guy, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, I know some guys who, got over those problems and their wives aren't complaining about their drinking anymore. So if you ever want to, hang out after work or whatever," I say, I'm more than happy to talk to you, introduce you to a few people. I know some places we could go. And you saw Christina, the shooter producer. she almost had a moment. Like I remember looking at her through the lens, and I see the camera go, whoa, 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 because she didn't know whether she had a house flipping show, whether she had an intervention show. She's like, I don't know what I got going on here. I said, you got Hurricane Dave. That's what you got. You guys figure out how to monetize it afterwards. I said, I'm just gonna, from him, through me, through the camera, and we'll see what happens. So it was a blessing. It was a lot of fun. But that angry GC construction guy, yeah, he's in me. It's not me. There's a few GCs I've said to him, if we don't figure this out, I'm going to have to wait in the bushes outside your house. And I don't want to do that. Right. Like I've got that kind of commentary when I need it. Not that I ever
Right.
would, but you got to know how to work with guys, man. I mean, I have garnered more favors from bringing 6 pizzas and a couple of liters of Diet Coke to the job site than anything else. And I'll give a tip to anybody who wants to flip a house and have a solid crew. Put your materials on your Amex card, build up your points, and at the end of every job, you pick 3 of the guys and you say to them, what do you need for a new tool? It might be a framing gun, it might be a nail gun, it might be a chop saw, whatever it is. But I promise you, you've got enough points that you can just buy that guy a tool. And they never, ever forgot that stuff, dude. Ever. Because I dug ditches, I told you. I know
Right.
where I came from. So I never, whoever you see on the way up, I promise you, you'll see him again on the way down. So do the right freaking thing 24/7. So anyway, that's that flipping Boston. That was a trip. That was a trip.
It sounds like there's way more stories that you could tell
Oh my
about
God.
that, but you got that blue collar in you.
Yeah.
Somehow you've been able to transition into the white collar world and doing the
Yeah.
private equity and
Yeah.
now doing
Yeah.
ground up construction and build to rent.
Yeah.
How do you make that switch? Was that something that happened over time, or were you eyeing that down the road? Like, okay, I need to
Yeah.
start
No, that's
continue to
great.
scale and
Yeah.
improve and get to the next level.
Uh, I'm going to be really frank with you. I get bored.
Hmm.
I get bored, dude. Flipping a house doesn't raise my doesn't raise my heart rate anymore, right? I know if I buy it right, I got to be a real donkey to screw it up. There's no challenge in that. So from flipping houses, I transitioned into private lending. I shared that with you with my son's capital and then my own capital. Then I did some hard money lending through a company. I built up my own portfolio of rental properties for cash flow. So I touched all of those components. And it was actually COVID that lent to me or leaned me towards where I am today. At a hard money lending business, COVID hit. The business had just ramped up about 4 months in. I was working on a line of credit, $50 million line of credit from Brixton Capital in New York. And when COVID hit, all of that capital for non-QM, non-owner occupied loans, it all dried up. It really wiped out a lot of the bit players in the marketplace. And it was control of the capital that took me out of business. I had about 12 million in loans in the pipe, and I wasn't funded. We were making money on the spread and a couple of points, and then ripping those loans right back out to the secondary market. So, the capital, the 50 mil had to turn over and over and over for it to work. And they stopped that part of the machine. And, I'd invested, I don't know, maybe a couple of $100,000 into building this company up and the office space. It was an exciting time. But God said, no, that's not what you're going to be doing. I got this COVID thing that's going to go running around for a while, and people are all going to go crazy, and the whole world's going to stop for a little bit. And coming 2 weeks, 3 weeks into it, I reached out to my partner who I was talking about before we started recording. Walter Novicki was a gentleman I had met on the road in the education space, and he was in Fort Myers area. And he started in student housing in Ohio, joined the military, he ran a special forces crew. Uh, to this day, there are things he can't tell you. He'd have to kill you legitimately, right? That was his clearance. It's funny, a little sidebar story on that. I was talking to him one day about 9/11, and I said to him, I said, after 9/11, being a firefighter, I went down to New York and rode in the Bronx with an engine and a ladder company just to support my brothers. And Walter said to me, he said, "Did you go work the pile?" Which was the destruction of the towers. They were clearing out the pile. I said, "I never worked the pile." And I said, "Did you have anything to do with that?" He goes, "I was there." I go, "Really? What were you doing?" He goes, "I was running my sniper crews on all the buildings around the top of the pile." He said, "to make sure nobody shot at you guys." So it was like, yeah, that's Walter. But anyway, while he was in the military, he's cash flowing student housing, gets out of the military, moves to Florida, and starts repositioning multifamily assets, doing one at a time, right? Doing one at a time, which ain't bad. You can make $1 million on a deal if you know what you're doing. Using other people's money. He had a capital company, investment company, construction company. He'd done some ground up stuff. Anyway, we're talking, and I'm like, "What the heck is next, Walter? This COVID thing is like thrown a huge curveball at so many people." And he said, "I think there's going to be distressed assets." Because if you remember, there was a moratorium on paying rents.
Oh yeah, the CARES Act.
Right. It was nuts. There was like,
Yeah.
"What are you doing? This is America. You can't do these things." And he said, "I think there's going to be some opportunities in the marketplace." And he said, "What are you up to?" I go, "I don't know, man. I'm praying. I'm trying to see what's next." He said, "Well, what if instead of doing one or two," he said, "we form the company." He said, "You work on the capital side." He said, "I'll work on the acquisitions and the follow through. We'll give it a go." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "But you got to bring me up the gradient." And I went almost into the bunker for like 4 months to learn the financial side of syndications and, Reg A, Reg D, all the different components, SEC compliance, what you can say, what you can't say. And he'd be like, "You can't say that." I'm like, "Why not? It's true." He goes, "Doesn't matter if it's true. You don't know that it can definitely be this and blah, blah, blah. And the company motto became, "Nobody looks good in an orange jumpsuit." Right? Like, get it right. Get it right. You're playing in a different sandbox. And that's where we started. And I found very quickly, and this is with respect. I mean, it is what it is. I don't hold back any, experience that I've had. The ego and the puff uppedness and the holier than thou mentality of white collar finance drove me even harder
Mm.
to get in there and mess it up a little bit. The indignance that they would use to this blue collar kid coming into their white collar world. And if one of the gifts that God gave me was a little bit of linguistic genius, and I was quite capable of going a couple of rounds verbally with anybody and everybody because I had confidence in what I was talking about, right? I had
Mhm.
confidence in the deal that I was sharing. I had confidence. And that's where it started. We put a fund together. We'll do a couple of syndicated deals. It was interesting. We thought there was going to be a massive amount of opportunity, and then they dump all of the free money into the marketplace, and they screwed up that plan 100% because every wannabe under the sun has suddenly got a couple of $1 million, and they just drove all the capitalization rates down, which drives the prices up. People were still borrowing at 3%, 2%. Europe was still in negative yield, so they love putting money into Europe. So there was all of this sovereign fund and European capital coming in. And I'm like, "What the frick is going on, Walter? You said there were going to be opportunities." He goes, "Nope, time to pivot. They changed the rules." And that's when we pivoted over to new construction and development work. In
Mm.
Fort Myers alone and the Cape Coral area, Cape Coral did a study. They are undersupplied by, I think it's 35,000 units through 2028, 2029, I think. And out of that 35,000 that they're shy right now, they've only delivered, I think, around 2,000 units into the marketplace. Because Florida is such a sexy market, man. They just keep on
Yeah.
pumping more and more people. They go, hurricane, whatever. Okay, let's fix it. Keep going. More people come, more people come. still the number one retirement destination for the Eastern Seaboard. So every one retiree brings 4 service jobs, and we found a nice niche in what we call workforce housing. It's not Section 8 housing, low income, but it's not the, gated community with the golf courses, bikinis and palm trees and all of that silliness. So we're right in that middle market, we call it. And we found a lot of success there. And it's interesting. Our tenant base is designed for firefighters, police officers, nurses,
Right.
restaurant workers, the folks that keep the community ticking over day in, day out. So that's where we do our business today.
So are you keeping those assets, or are you building them and selling them, or are you
No,
operating?
because we build them. We usually have a 3 to 5 year exit strategy on them. So the LP and the GP, we're the general partner. We'll bring 10% of the equity needed to the deal. That other 90% is raised with the limited partners, accredited investors primarily. Got a family office and a few other heavy hitters who play with us. They'll come in the LP position. So, the leverage is high now. We like it that way. Low. It will do 65, 70% loan to value because the interest rates are obviously higher. So we'll then build the asset, stabilize the asset, work the asset, massage the rents, build up the valuation on the net operating income. And then the plan is to exit out of those things. Like I said, 3 to 5 years, some of them a little bit longer. But people don't complain because you're like, hey, you want cash flow for another 2 years and still get a big chunk of change? Yeah, okay. That works. And then they sit in
especially if you're paying dividends.
That's right. You're paying the dividends, and they're sitting in the equity waterfall on the back end.
Yeah.
In our inner circle, the investment group I was telling you about, the members that come into that get monthly access and monthly interaction with us. And then on top of that, they get preferred economics in any deal that they do with us. So right now, the industry standard is like a 70-30, 70% to the investor, 30 to the GP, and about a 7 or an 8% pref. But our inner circle members, our club members, they come in and they get a 10% pref, and they come in on an 80-20 split with us. So they get a bigger piece of the pie. And we only charge them 25 grand up front. It's like joining a country club, right?
Sure.
So they come in the country club, their investment into that club is the 25, and then they sit in the best economics that we can offer for the deal flow that we have. And we're blessed. We got a nice solid pipeline of deals. And that keeps things rolling. So it works. It works. And people say thank you.
Right.
That's what's nice,
Well, they should say thank you too, because I don't know of any other capital raiser out there that's creating like this exclusive club they can be part of. They're just going there, they're raising money as they normally would. How did you come up with that idea to create this like club, which is it's another barrier, right? You're making it more exclusive to invest with you. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. How'd you come up with that?
It's funny that mastermind group that you referred to earlier, right? The family mastermind. So in that group were some old school guys, including myself and a few others. And I reconnected with a marketing guy out of Tampa who I've known for years. I've known him for 12, 13 years. And I was at an event in Florida. It wasn't that mastermind, but I saw him at another event. And I pulled him aside and I just said to him, look, brother, here's what's going on with me. I said, I need a good marketing team. I need an alliance. I said, I am sick and freaking tired of paying 25 to 50 grand a month to somebody who says they're going to, do all these wonderful things for me. And they don't come through. No offense to the marketers out there, but, for me, they've always overpromised and underdelivered. So I said to him, I said, what about an alliance, a partnership? What if we form an entity structure where you do what you do really, really well, take a bigger piece of the educational incomes that come off of it, if it makes sense. I'll take a smaller piece of that, use my face, use the brand, use Freedom Venture Investments, our investment firm. I said, and then you come in on the GP. I'll bring you into the deals so that your kids and your grandkids have that legacy wealth that we talk about as investors. And he looked at me like I was giving him the golden goose. He's like, are you serious? I go, yeah, dude. I said, I know you. I trust you. I know how good you are at what you do. You know what I can do. You've seen it over the years. And that's where it started. So, we've built it slowly over a year. And in the past 3 months, we just finished structuring the Inner Circle group and what those deliverables are. We just recorded a presentation. We've got a nice little deal in Rotunda West, 16 units, ground up construction, bigger units, around 1,800 square feet. But the total deal is about 6 mil, and there's a $2 million raise on there. So that's a deal that we're bringing into that Inner Circle. They're coming in. They're looking at a 3 equity multiple over that 3 to 5 years as we lease up those 16 units and either put them back out in the marketplace or keep them. But those smaller deals in that environment, everybody can wrap their head around that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you see out there. I start seeing guys who are, they've got no track record and they're pushing 400 units in, Huntsville, Alabama. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about, dude? You're going to raise $25 million? Well, when was the last time you did that? What's your track record, right? What's your incremental growth? So we've done the bigger stuff, but we find a really nice pop and a really good, again, Inner Circle. It's called Legacy Alliance, VIP. Legacy Alliance is the brand that we created on the education side. And then Freedom Venture Investments, our investment firm, comes in and brings the asset to the market. So, it's a couple of guys. This guy and I will be texting and emailing each other at like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 1 in the morning. Because, it's that entrepreneur. I was up in the fire truck at 1 in the morning. Why can't I be up at 1 o'clock in the morning, getting creative and putting some jam on the bread? You know what I mean? So that's how that came about.
Well, that'll get your adrenaline going again, right? Like, not putting out
yeah.
fires, but something new and exciting.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what you've been doing over the years, is chasing that next boost of energy. And this here is great. I mean, it's innovative. You're helping out people with education. You're helping them get these deals done. Yeah. Because there's still that gap. Like, when you go out and you raise money and people are like, how am I going to get my money back? Like, how does the waterfall work? Like, what are all these numbers mean? I don't understand any of this. And so there's a bit of education that you can help people acquire through the sales process. But you can do it through this education group that you've built. It's called the Alliance.
Legacy Alliance VIP Club.
How exclusive is that? Can people who are watching this join, or is this something
they can? If you're not an accredited investor, you can still join, but you're not going to be participating in accredited investor deals, right? However, that being said, we also have fixed income funds that pay 10% on a monthly distribution. Those funds are then used for earnest money deposits on investments. Think of it like a bond rating, if you will, like a capital for keeping them business moving forward. And then when the accredited investor comes in and takes out that earnest money as an LP, then it's recapitalized back to the expansion fund. But if there are people out there who, they know they want to learn the business, number one, and then number two, they want to participate in the business. The Inner Circle, the Alliance Club, is designed to serve both those types. And what I've seen over my career is people get excited about the education. Then when they try to do it themselves, they've got a fear factor of actually pulling the trigger. Then you got to start thinking about, well, can you qualify for a $10 million loan, even if it is an asset that's cash flowing, right? They don't have necessarily that financial depth. And they find that their education is critical for them to then choose deals to go into. And they don't have to do deals with us. You can do deals with anybody you want. But what would it be like if you had what you thought was a really good deal? You bring it to the community. It gets underwritten by the guys who know how to do it. And they say, not only is that a good deal, can I put money in it too? You know what I mean? Right. Or they look at it and go, are you all right, you donkey? Did you see this, and this? You know what I mean? Like, have that ability and that safety net. And think about it. If the investment's $25,000, can you make a mistake bigger than that in the commercial real estate world? Yeah, you can. And then what if you're making that mistake with somebody else's money? What does that do for you? That takes you out of the game. If you're a good person, right, who's trying to do the right thing, and you make those mistakes, the sins of omission don't count in this world. Right. You present yourself as an expert. So, that was the messaging behind it. It's good cash flow on the education side. Let's just be frank. But the overhead for any education structure is pretty heavy too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Editing, marketing,
The
ads, fulfillment.
Yeah.
I recorded a 80 lesson segment on underwriting and interacting with capital raisers and interacting with sellers and brokers, just mini lessons so people get a nice foundation. And then with that came the underwriting templates and software that we use in our business. We'll even offer to put the whole packet together if somebody wants to go out and do it themselves. Give me your data. Let us put together your pro forma, your underwriting, your pitch deck. There's an opportunity to spend some time with me one-on-one and be coached through it. So, there's verticals within there that are great for the client, but they're good for us as well.
Yeah.
Like I want to always be testing my own skills. So it's an exciting time. 25 is going to be strong, brother. It's going to be strong. It's going to be good.
Yeah. I'm super excited about it too.
Yeah.
Just listening to you talk about these deals that you're working on gets me going.
Yeah.
So we got to talk more about this, but for people that are interested, if they're accredited or they just want to find out what you're working on, how can they find you online?
Yeah, LinkedIn is always good. Just get me on LinkedIn, Dave Seymour. Just Google me on the LinkedIn profile. I'm old school. We've actually got a phone number that you can call and speak to the office. It's 781-922-4418. If you Google Dave Seymour Legacy Alliance, you'll come into some messaging there. There's a chance to get on a one-on-one with me and see if we can serve you that way. Or info, INFO, at freedomventure.com, or just go to freedomventure.com to our website. And if you go on our website, you can see our deal flow. There's some education on there as well. Not part of the Legacy Alliance. It's not the investment group, but it's a place to start getting your feet wet and figure out whether this business is for you or not.
Amazing. Well, it's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit and hearing some stories. And you probably have a biography planned at some point in your life, right? Like you'd have to get all this stuff on paper someplace. So everybody can read about it. But thanks for taking the time, Dave. It was really nice to talk with you. Thanks for sharing your stories.
You're welcome, brother. God bless. Have a great 25. I'll talk to you soon. Let me know if I can help you in the future.
Oh, you can count on it. I'm really excited to talk to you more. And everybody, thanks for checking out this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Go check out Dave's stuff. Check out the Legacy Alliance. Check out Freedom Investments. Look at his projects. I'm sure there's something there that you could look at, potentially even invest in. But thanks for checking out this edition, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.